Hello there. What is going on, everybody? Today, I just kind of wanted to do a video talking about battle forces because we've gotten so much new information lately on the different battle forces that are coming. And I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions out there. And I wanted to help kind of get the word out as to what battle forces are, what information we have, and what they are not, at least as of right now. So, with all that being said, make sure you guys are subscribed. Leave a comment that enters you to win the $25 Amazon gift card giveaway that's going on right now. You just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. Also, shout out to today's sponsored luxury playstyle for the most amazing Legion compatible tokens. Check these out. They are so beautiful with the full metal, double-sided, got a couple different finishes there. They also have tokens for games like X-Wing and lots of other games out there, L5R, the Arkham games, all that good stuff. So check them out and use code Crabbok VIP to save 15%. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the 4 battle forces that are coming soon-ish. Asterisk. We have for all the 4 factions, we've got Echo Base Defenders, Blizzard Force, the Droid Invasion, and the 501st coming for, of course, the Rebels, then the Empire, and then the Separatists and the Republic, respectively. Those are the first 4 that we are going to be getting. And what are they, right? That's a lot of people are confused as to what battle forces are. Basically, for a long time, even back into the earlier days of Legion, or I say around the time of Clone Wars kind of coming out, Alex Davey and Luke Eddy were sitting down talking about sub-factions. They were saying that was something that they wanted to do, and we've hinted and eventually, it merged into battle forces. So battle forces is the way that Legion is doing sub-factions. And so that's kind of like a faction within a faction. Basically what a battle force is that it's a special rule set for a very specific army that usually represents a smaller organized force within any particular faction or at a certain battle. And of course, it doesn't have to be within a particular faction, but the first 4 that we're getting most certainly are. And we're going to talk a little bit about other battle forces and what might be coming towards the end of the video. So what do we know? Because a lot of people think of battle forces as something that GW has, where they call them battle boxes, where it's sort of like an expansion box that you buy that has a lot of different things in them, like a bunch of army, like almost like an army in a box. And a lot of people thought that the battle forces are going to be that, and they're not. These battle forces are going to be completely free. They're going to be downloadable, print and play PDFs. And so that's certainly good news. Now, a lot of people, I've seen people complain a little bit when they've heard that, and they say that I don't want to have to print and play my own stuff. Well, I would imagine at some point they'll make these cards available, whether it be through OP kits or a future box set. That is a possibility, but nothing like that has been announced at this point in time. So, as of right now, just talking about what we do know, these are going to be PDFs that you can just download that will have all of the information. What information are they going to have? Well, let's start off with a new force organization chart. Now, what I mean by force organization chart is that's the army building rules of what you must have and what you can have, your minimums, your maximums, your limits for building an army in Star Wars Legion. The standard force organization chart is the one that if you play Legion, you're already familiar with. But minimum of 1 commander, maximum of 2. A minimum of 0 for most of the things, like special forces, but maximum of 3. Minimum of 3 core, maximum of 6 core, so on and so forth. Now, a new force organization chart can change those numbers for a battle force. So, for example, we learned a little bit about the 501st having, a lower number of required core, a lower maximum number of core, but a higher maximum of special forces, and also different minimums. So you might find that, some factions allow for more vehicles than you were used to. Some factions allow for less vehicles than you were used to, or I should say battle forces, right? And you're going to be basically having a tighter restriction on how you can build these. Now, also specific unit restrictions. These are usually going to be based on thematic things. So when we take the Battle of Hoth, for example, they're not going to be allowing characters that were never on Hoth. Like, you're not going to see Lando in the Echo Base Defenders, because he was never on Echo Base, and so that's one of the things you're going to see. You're going to be limiting characters to characters that were in this battle, or at least that makes sense to be on these battles. So for example, with Blizzard Force, the Empire's force that was attacking Echo Base, you're probably not going to have dewbacks available for that faction. But if they ever add those range troopers from Solo, the big ice woolly guard, those actually might, and this is a speculation on my part, but those might make sense to go into Blizzard Force, and so pending Lucasfilm approval, maybe they'll be added, and that's another thing, is that these PDFs and these lists aren't final, and in that when something is released, PDF on what can go in a specific battle force, it's not locked in permanently. Those things can always be adjusted as new characters are announced for the game. They can potentially go into these potential Blizzard Force packages. So if they ever do make a Dash Rendar, then maybe he could go into Echo Base Defenders, for example, because if you played Shadows of the Empire for the Nintendo 64, you'll know that you start off as Dash Rendar flying in a snowspeeder. So there's definitely a lot of future flexibility. So just because somebody is not allowed in this particular battle force doesn't mean they'll never be allowed in this battle force. Now, why would you want to build with a restricted list? Well, that's a very good question. For one, it might allow you some new build opportunities with the force organization chart. But the other thing is command cards. Command cards is a big deal because every battle force is going to be getting new command cards. It sounds like each one is going to have 3 command cards, although that isn't necessarily a set in stone rule. That's just what we come to expect from most things. We've had a few of the command cards spoiled for us, and they have the potential to be pretty powerful command cards. We know that the Echo Base Defenders have one that's going to be giving all emplacement troopers a standby, and that can be very, very strong, especially if you're running 5 emplacement troopers, big turrets. Handing out 5 standbys at the beginning of the round, can be amazing. So I think that's a really cool thing to consider. So these battle forces have themes, and they have command cards that are going to kind of reward you for building a list with a more restricted rule set. And so I think that's kind of one of the big draws to these battle forces, because you can already build a Hoth themed battle force. I know a lot of people, that was one of the first things they started doing, since the first year of Legion had a lot of the content from the Battle of Hoth, between the ATSTs and the snow speeders, and then the snow troopers came out, and the FD turrets, and then Leia, and a lot of the different characters were all characters that were on Hoth, and it all made sense. I say Leia because I painted my Leia in white instead of the Endor look, but like the way that she's sculpted, she can kind of go in either setting. So I always kind of thought the Leia expansion looked a little bit better suited for Hoth than for Endor. However, that's a matter of personal preference. But either way, we know that there's going to be some a lot of different potential builds for these battle forces, and a lot of extra restrictions. And the other thing is that there's also new possibilities for battle forces to have their own custom rules. Like, for example, we know that Blizzard Force, the Empire's version, is going to have a whole new type of stormtrooper available to it, which is going to have like its own new rank, and it's going to be a special stormtrooper that can take 2 heavies. We haven't seen a unit card. We don't know any specifics about it, other than basically just that it's going to have some new type of rank, and it will be able to take 2 heavies. So that is going to be pretty interesting. And so I think that's it's a lot of really cool things that we can potentially do with these battle forces. Another thing that we know about these battle forces is they will also be tournament legal. This has raised some eyebrows and has some people wondering, well, what happens if these are too strong or too powerful, and like everybody's dominating the meta with like Blizzard Force or something like that? Well, that's kind of one of the reasons that we tune things in Legion. So if something is kind of running wild or running rampant, they can always increase points on certain things. And as a matter of fact, you could even add a battle force specific points change where, hey, if you take this battle force, this guy's a little cheaper in here, but if you take this battle force, maybe this guy becomes a little more expensive because he's too good in this battle force. They could always do things like that. I mean, if they're making all new unit types, whole new type of stormtrooper that's only going in one battle force, then I'm sure they can make custom rules for that. So now they haven't said that they'll do that specifically, but that does fit the mold of how balancing has kind of happened. If something becomes too weak, they can always reduce the points on it and make it more viable. That's happened a lot of times. Hello, Jin and Pathfinders and stuff like that. ATSTs and Snowspeeders have seen lots of changes in points adjustments and stuff to make them more and more competitive, and it's usually incrementally how that sort of thing is done. Now, a lot of people are also wondering, what about the future of battle forces? Are these going to be the only 4 we're going to get? And the answer to that is no, they are not going to be the only 4 we are going to get. We already know that the Shadow Collective box is coming at some point this year, probably later in the year. I would say my guess is it's going to be Q3 before the Shadow Collective comes out. And that's largely because of the fact that they haven't given us really any previews. They gave us a little sneak preview. It seems like a very early preview during the last mini extravaganza, but we don't have any other previews or even an idea of what other expansions are coming besides the Shadow Collective box itself. We don't know if everything in there is going to have its own individual expansions, if you'll be able to buy those things a la carte, or if you're going to have to buy multiple Shadow Collective boxes, what the MSRP is going to be like, what the box art looks like. We don't know really anything about that, but what we do know is the Shadow Collective will contain mercs, a new kind of, the absence of a faction, I guess you would call them, that can't just go into a list on their own, but they have to go into other lists, and certain mercs will be able to go into certain factions only, but they also can potentially go into their own list if it's within a specific battle force. And the Shadow Collective specifically is its own battle force. And of course, you're going to have things like the Pikes and Black Sun and the Darth Maul and the Mauldalorians. And some of those, like the Pikes and then the Black Sun will be able to go into certain factions, whereas Maul and the Mandalorian Super Commandos or the Mauldalorians will not be able to go in any other factions, according to what EMG has released. But that's at least a 5th battle force. But so it means we're not only going to get 4, but there's also other ones coming too. Don't forget that in 2023, AMG is supposed to be releasing EWOKs, and based on all of the spoiler talk that we've heard about EWOKs, is that it wouldn't make sense for them to just join a rebel army and like they weren't leaving world. So it definitely sounds like EWOKs will be a battle force, and so. It wouldn't surprise me if EWOKs didn't actually come into the rebellion, if they were just mercs, kind of like how a lot of other Shadow Collective stuff is, and they only can be run in their own battle force. And it's a really great way to be able to take something that isn't really worth building a whole entire army around if they only ran a small subset in canon. But you definitely want to be able to include certain things from other factions with them. So I would guess that if they do EWOKs, they would probably also allow Chewbacca and Han Solo in that particular battle force. It just makes sense to me, but might not be required, right? So what else are we going to get? So there's been a lot of things that have been kind of hinted at. And so I think there's a lot of different potential for other battle forces. Certainly if you watch, the Clone Wars or the films, you're going to see lots of different groups represented, other fighting armies, or even criminal organizations and things like that all would potentially make sense to have a presence in Star Wars Legion. But some sub-factions or battle forces that have been hinted at by various developers over the years, Gungans and Geonosians were the first 2 that were talked about by Alex Davey and Luke Eddy at an Adepticon, I want to say at least 3 years ago, a long time ago. They were talked about briefly as something that they would like to do. We haven't seen Gungans or Geonosians show up yet, or any hints that they're coming anytime soon, but those do remain some very recognizable and prominent groups from the Clone Wars era. So I think that especially Gungans, I'm 100% in for Gungans whenever those do show up. But those aren't the only ones that have been teased. We've certainly heard some stuff about Dathomir or Night Sisters. I think there's a lot of potential for a Dathomir battle force. It could be, but it could be Night Sisters and Night Brothers. There's a lot of Dathomir stuff that you can do between archers with bows, people with axes, zombies, the Mother Talzin, Asajj Ventress, Maul could potentially go into a Dathomir, easily. Maul could absolutely go with that. Savage Opress. There's a lot of potential for different operatives, commanders, and core and special forces units for Dathomir. So I think that would be a really, really fun one to do. The Imperial Remnant is also another possibility. I think it works really, really well as a separate Imperial subfaction or battle force, especially with the idea that they've talked about doing stuff from the Mandalorian. So you have things like Moff Gideon that should potentially be coming that could potentially work in either Empire or in the Imperial Remnant. So that's, I think, a battle force that just kind of writes itself. If you just watch the show, you see all the stuff that they have available. So it would be pretty easy to come up with a battle force for that, as well as, of course, Mandalorians as their own battle force. I think that would be maybe one of the most fun battle forces that we could do right now. Because of the fact that we have so much content for Mandalorians, especially if you're watching Disney Plus series, you're going to see a ton of it, and it's just been growing, and it's like definitely one of the biggest subcultures of Star Wars is fans of Mandalorians. So I think the Mandalorian battle force should absolutely be a thing that comes. Balancing it could be kind of interesting though, because Mandalorians are very strong. So it could be, one of the first battle forces that kind of stresses like a 5 or 6 activation count for its armies, which might end up being a thing. I mean, and if you're going to do that, then I would also say let's try and get Jedi specific battle forces as well. Again, I'd like to see more battle forces that do stress heroes, or at least maybe a new mode that runs heroes. But then I'm getting a little bit too far out of the box. But those are just some speculation ideas on future battle forces that we might see. Certainly it ties in to hints that have been dropped and the direction that it seems like they might go. And I think what's great about these battle forces is it gives you, a new Force org chart and a PDF downloads. It allows them to put a whole lot of content in the game without having to wait for product to get printed. It allows them to give you new ways to play with miniatures that you already have, and can be a really exciting way to spark up your local meta, which is just kind of the way that everybody's playing the game. Throw a monkey wrench in there and be like, hey, now all of a sudden the game's flipped on its head. You've got, like, instead of just 4 factions, you've got like 8 if you count the battle forces, because they're kind of like sub-factions. So it could be really interesting, and I'll be curious to see how powerful certain battle forces end up being once we get a look at all of the command cards and all the Force org details for all of the battle forces that are coming out. And, and which one, I want to hear from you guys too. Which battle force do you think will be on top based on what we see right now? My money is on Blizzard Force, because I think they won, right? It was like one of the few times the Empire actually won, and it was right here, right? Veers just knocked it out of the park. He was the only Imperial officer that actually did his job right. He just knocked it out of the park. So my money's on Blizzard Force, but I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. Plus, I really like Snow Troopers in the game too. All right, well, that's going to do it for today's video. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me today. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are amazing and help make this channel possible. So if you're interested in supporting the channel and checking out Patreon, check out the links in the description below. I will talk to you guys soon. May the Force be with you, and as always, have a great day and try to stay warm out there.